Okay, once again, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We, SCBNA, SER, and the SER Midwest Great Lakes chapter are really excited to welcome you to the first of two planned webinars, where we'll be talking about our joint conference this summer and also be showcasing some of the projects that will be in attendance at the conference, almost as a preview of what is to come in a few months. So this is going to be a really, really great session. The first thing that I'd like to do is introduce all of the organizations that are present today and hosting this webinar. These are also the organizations that will be hosting our conference in the summer. So for those of you that are unaware of what SCBNA is, we are a professional society dedicated to advancing the science and practice of conserving Earth's biological diversity. That means that we support and provide resources for everyone and anyone engaged in conservation in North America, although we primarily do so via three different means. One of those is professional development opportunities like today's webinar, but we also host online workshops and policy webinars to inform members of pertinent issues taking place in our region. We also host a number of research and publication journals that members have access to and are able to publish their work on. And then we host a biannual conference that is our big event where we bring all of our members together in order to share research, share their work, and develop interdisciplinary projects. As mentioned previously, this year's biannual conference is being co-hosted with SCR and the Midwest Great Lakes chapter. So that aspect of interdisciplinarity and networking is going to be enhanced tenfold. And I will talk a bit more about the conference in a few slides. But first, I want to pass it on to Tony Ballard, who is the education manager at SCR, to introduce SCR to everyone.
Thank you, Bernie. As Bernie said, I'm Tony Ballard, manager of meetings and education with SCR. You see on the screen there, hopefully, that if you're not a member of SCR, we're a global network of a little more than 1,500 members from more than 130 countries. SCR has been around since the 1980s. Our vision is ecological restoration as a fundamental component of conservation and sustainable development worldwide. And then, as you just heard from Bernie, I think that our mission and the SCB mission and SCBNA's mission very well align. We're advancing the science, practice, and policy of ecological restoration to sustain biodiversity, strengthen climate resilience, and reestablish a healthy relationship between nature and culture. So we encourage you to join us as a member of SCR. We have lots of different membership options. It's great to have our presenter today, who's one of our SCR members as well, and then also one of our certified ecological restoration practitioners. So fantastic to have that. We appreciate his willingness to do this. It's been great to partner with SCBNA to do the conference for this year. I think it will be fantastic to bring together both organizations, as there is a lot of crossover between what folks are doing for work for both organizations, and we have a lot of members that belong to both organizations as well. So we look forward to continuing to foster that relationship as well. With that in mind, I'll turn that over to our program manager from the Midwest Great Lakes chapter, Meg Hansen. You're muted, Meg. Oh, she's still talking. You're muted, Meg. There you go.
Hi, everyone. I'm Meg Hansen. I'm the program manager for the Midwest Great Lakes chapter of the Society for Ecological Restoration. Everything Tony says is what we do as well. We just do it at a regional level. Our chapter represents 554 members across Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, and Minnesota. And with Missouri hopefully joining us soon, it's something we've been pushing for. We're proud to be one of the largest regional chapters in SCR International. We are connecting restoration professionals, practitioners, technicians, researchers, students, academics, and volunteers throughout the entire Midwest. We thank you for your support. Thank you for joining this webinar. Thank you for coming to our meeting coming up in July. And if you would like more information about SCR or Midwest Great Lakes chapter, I invite you to explore SCR's website to learn more about the organization and our chapter at ser.org. And then you can search up our chapter on that website. So thank you all for coming, and I look forward to seeing what Jeff has to share.
Thank you, Tony and Meg, for those introductions. In addition to the introductions, I also wanted to share a couple of QR codes here on the screen. If any of you want to become members of SCBNA or SCR, that includes SCR Midwest Great Lakes chapter, you can do so by taking a picture of the QR codes on the screen. We will also add relevant links to the chat as Jeff is going through his presentation. So we really encourage you to join. Joining will not only give you benefits to both organizations, but it would also give you a reduced rate to register for a conference in the summer. So as Meg mentioned, our North American Congress for Conservation and Restoration will be taking place on July 12th through 16th in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Our theme for this year's conference is Conservation and Restoration for People and Nature. And as you saw, we'll be bringing in 3 amazing organizations to host and provide sessions, workshops, field trips for everyone in attendance that really speaks to the need for joint support and joint engagement in protecting and restoring our natural world. So we really encourage everyone to attend. Registration for the conference is now open and available for everyone. If you are looking for travel support for the conference, that is also available through our registration page. Specifically, we'll be offering registration awards that you can apply for, but there will also be volunteer rebates available that you can also apply for and receive a reduction in registration costs in exchange for some volunteer hours during the conference. In addition to registration, we also have our call for abstracts open for 15-minute talks, speed talks, and poster sessions. The call for abstracts will be open through March 15th, after which we'll review abstracts and invite folks to present at our conference. If you've never submitted an abstract before or are wondering what information do I need to include in an abstract submission, we also have an abstract preparation workshop taking place next Friday. So I encourage you to register for that workshop. We'll have one of SCBNA's longtime members guide you through the abstract submission process and give you some good tips. And then that will allow you to submit an abstract for consideration for the conference. And if you have questions about any of this, including registration for the conference, please do not hesitate to let us know at the Q&A portion of today's session. Okay, that's enough of us. It is my pleasure to now introduce our speaker for today, Jeff Baglin. Jeff has 15 years of experience doing habitat restoration work within the Greater Milwaukee metropolitan area. Currently, Jeff is the land manager of the Wehr Nature Center, Milwaukee County Park's only nature center, and a 220-acre nature preserve located in Franklin, Wisconsin, a suburb of Milwaukee. His job includes developing, preparing, and implementing the center's restoration and management plan, overseeing day-to-day stewardship activities, leading youth and adult volunteer groups, and community engagement. Jeff is a certified ecological restoration practitioner, nature enthusiast, and an advocate for urban habitat restoration. During his free time, Jeff and his family enjoy centering vacations around Wisconsin state park locations. Jeff, thank you so much for being here today, for presenting on your work. And once again, I just want to remind everyone that Jeff will be in attendance at the conference in the summer. He will likely be presenting something akin to what he'll be talking about today. And Jeff will also be leading a field trip on behalf of the conference to the Wehr Nature Center. So you might be able to enjoy the center in person if you attend. Okay, Jeff, passing on to you.
All right, thanks. Share my screen here. Oh, sorry, I shared the wrong one. All right. All right, can you see it? All righty.
You are in presenter view, though.
Oh. All right, that's not what I wanted then. All right. We'll just go with this. All righty. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for letting me present here today. Like Bernie said, my name is Jeff. Super excited. I'm a SEER member, have been for quite some time now. I just recently got my SERP certification, which was a very exciting and very big process to go through. So let me just get started. And all right, so some of the things that we're going to be talking about today is the history of Wehr Nature Center, the habitat restoration work that's happening within our 220-acre nature preserve, looking at short-term, long-term goals, and some of the current stewardship activities. We're going to talk about how we engage with volunteers, because that's really the biggest way that we're able to get a lot of our work done. And then my whole career has been centered around doing urban restoration, so habitat restoration within urban limits. And we're going to talk about the various dynamics that go with nature centers and urban settings. So we are located right where that beaver is. We're on southeastern Wisconsin. We're about 25 minutes away from downtown Milwaukee. We're in the southwestern portion of Milwaukee County Parks. Milwaukee County Parks as a whole is roughly 15,000 acres. So that includes over 180 picnic areas and pavilion and shelter areas. That includes over 100 miles of biking and multi-purpose trail networks. It includes two botanical institutions, one of them being Berner Botanical Gardens, also found in Whitnall Park with Wehr Nature Center, and also the Mitchell Park Domes Conservancy. Of the 15,000 acres of park space within Milwaukee County, roughly half of that is natural space or green space, not designated for parks or lawn or playground or anything like that. So it makes up about 7,500 acres in 90 of our parks and parkways. So where Nature Center is found in Whitnall Park, we have a pretty deep history here. So in the 1920s, 1928, Whitnall Park was purchased by the City Park Commission. At the time, it wasn't a county park, it was a city park. So in the 20s, it was purchased by the City Park Commission. And in the 30s, the Civilian Conservation Corps during the Great Depression were really, really integral to Milwaukee County Parks as a whole, to building a lot of the infrastructure that we still have today. They were building the roads, they were building trails and planting trees and a lot of the infrastructure. And at Wehr, they were stationed here, the CCC was stationed here, and about 300 men were responsible for creating the infrastructure of Wehr Nature Center, the land that Wehr Nature Center is on, and also the surrounding whole Whitnall Park. So it included the roads, trails, bridges, dams, and also Mallard Lake, which is pictured here. So this is Mallard Lake in 1936 when it was completed. It's roughly a 20-acre man-made lake that was built within Test Corners Creek, which is the natural creek that flows through Whitnall Park. In the 30s, they removed about 150,000 cubic yards of soil to create this lake. It was originally designed and built as a recreational lake, but shortly after, roughly 15 years after it was built, they had to close it down because of water quality issues, because at this time, there was a lot of farmland, and all that stormwater coming from farm was draining right into Mallard Lake. So that was quite unfortunate. 1964 rolls around, and at this point, Wehr Nature Center isn't established yet, but the 220 acres that makes up the nature preserve were already established. And Berner Botanical Gardens, which is right in Whitnall Park, at that time they were doing a lot of research and a lot of studies with area universities on how to restore native habitat. And in 1964, Berner Botanical Gardens, along with UW-Milwaukee and the UW Arboretum in Madison, Wisconsin, did a 7.5 acre prairie planting where they were testing how effective various methods of seeding a native prairie would take. So in this 7.5 acres in the picture, you can see there's rows of various mode levels. They were testing how effective seed would germinate if it was just hand sown into the ground, or if it was drilled into the ground and actually buried into the top layer of the soil. They were also testing if there was a difference between seed that was sourced locally, and in this case, it was sourced from the Curtis Prairie at UW Madison's Arboretum, which is Wisconsin's oldest prairie restoration. So we got seed from Curtis Prairie, and then we also have seed from over 500 miles away, mostly in Illinois, Iowa, and some in Missouri, to figure out if seed from warmer conditions would actually establish. And ultimately, what they found is the sourcing of the seed actually didn't play that big of a difference in the effectiveness of how it would germinate, but probably not a surprise, hand sowing seed was less effective than drilling. But this was a pretty important study that was done in the early 60s when habitat restoration was really kind of new in the field. So Wehr Nature Center opened in 1974. In 2024, we celebrated our 50th anniversary, which was pretty good. And we've gone through some changes during the years, but the whole time our mission has been to inspire current and future generations to love and care for nature. And we do this in a lot of different ways. We do public programming with area schools and being both private and public schools. We have adult programming. We have a Wisconsin Master Naturalist course that is hosted here. There's various citizen science or community science research done here. But really, we just want people to get outside, love the place that they call home, the park that they call home, and really get a deeper value for nature. Not just being a pretty place, but really understanding how important these natural spaces are. So that was a very, very quick history tour of Wehr Nature Center, but really this is where my job lies. So this is the part that I'm most excited about. I've been here at Wehr Nature Center since 2023, so only a few years. Prior to that, there was actually a pretty big gap in space where there wasn't a designated land manager. So there was about 7 years prior to me where there was no designated land manager here. And then probably for the 15 years before me, there was a lot of inconsistent land management. So there's been some challenges at Wehr Nature Center, and there's been some spaces that have definitely gone to the wayside, but there's a lot of places that were really held up nicely, and it was mostly by volunteers, which I will talk about later on. So in the picture here, You can see that the map has all these different colored polygons. That's the range of our 220 acres. You can see that Mallard Lake is right in the middle of it. To the west of us, we have a lot of residential and commercial residency there and development, which really just kind of came up in the last 35 years. You can see that there's a golf course that's right next to us. That's Whitnall Golf. And just north of us and a little east is Burnham Botanical Gardens that you can't see. But each of those polygons, colored polygons, are various management units because I'm the only land manager here for 220 acres. There's no way that I can keep everything straight. So we have 220 acres that's broken into 23 different management areas that are designated by either plant community, topography, or also physical barriers such as trails, property lines, water. So when I got here in 2023, the previous land manager had a management plan from 2002. And in 2002, from 2002 to 2023, when I started, there was a lot of change that has happened. Emerald ash borer, for example, came in during that time and decimated a lot of our ash trees in various areas. Population grew between that time to the west of us, which created more of a public presence in our park, more people using the trails, more people going off trails. There was an inconsistent land management effort. So some of the management units changed because no one was managing them, and you can't just let land do its thing in an urban area. So my job for the first year was to update this very old management plan. And in order to do that, I had to go through the entire 220 acres, the 23 management units, and do an assessment of what the land was like when I walked there and compare it to the 2002 management plan. And what I came with was a lot changed. A lot of goals had to be altered. A lot of objectives had to be altered. So really what I wanted to showcase in this management plan was like the current ecological threats. And what you can't see here are the ecological threats from 2002. So I had kind of a side-by-side document showing 2002 versus 2023. And then I also broke down all the management units in a way that showed a 10-year or 10 plus year objective scale. That was something that wasn't implemented in the previous management plan. And really the whole management plan and like a basis of the management plan is to guide restoration work for many generations. A lot of times we're doing work and we're planning out 10, 20 years into a project, and you never know how long you're going to be at a job. So if there's no management plan that is really guiding the work, you can go from manager to manager that can change very drastically based on what they think and what they see. So this was a really big undertaking, but it was something that was so valuable for the longevity of the restoration work here. So I'm just going to show some pictures of Wehr Nature Center, talk about various restoration projects, various states that we're in. So this first picture here, if you look from the top of the picture, that's our main grassland. Wehr Nature Center has 4 distinct plant communities. We have grasslands that range from savanna to mesic prairie to dry prairie. We have woodlands that are mostly southern mesic and southern dry mesic forests. We have wetlands that include shrub carr, sedge meadow, and southern lowland forests. We also have an ephemeral pond, which is this bottom of the picture here. And then we have aquatic also, which is Mallard Lake and Test Corners Creek that flows in here. So we're talking about these plant communities here. Even though there was inconsistent land management efforts happening prior to me starting, there was still a lot of work that happened. During this time where there wasn't a land manager here, Milwaukee County Parks Natural Areas team stepped in and started managing some of this property. Their job is to manage all 7,500 acres of natural space within Milwaukee County. So it was a limited effort that they were able to put into Wehr Nature Center, but they were able to come in and give their expertise and give their guidance. We also had volunteers that stepped up, and though they didn't have backgrounds in restoration, they did have a passion for pulling garlic mustard, Dame's rocket, and common buckthorn, which are three pretty aggressive invasives that we have here. So they were doing a lot of the legwork on maintaining these plant communities in a state that didn't have a lot of direction. And then we also had other naturalist staff here that were leading weed outs and leading some management effort, but that was on top of their already big plate of job responsibilities. So there was inconsistencies. So this picture here, this is showing our major grassland here. So on the right side of the road, that's what we call our savanna. It's functioning ecologically as a prairie. There's not enough bur oak trees to call it a savanna, but this area is relatively free of non-native invasives. There's a few patches of crown vetch in there, but really this whole prairie, or this whole savanna, excuse me, is about 18 acres. My goal for this area is to increase the population and increase the density of our bur oak trees. One way that we're doing it is by planting, obviously, more bur oaks in this area. But another way is we're just protecting the saplings and the yearlings that are reproducing from deer and animal browse, which I will talk about later. On the other side of the road, on the left side of the road, that's our main prairie. That's the one that was studied in 1964, so that's still present there. Again, that area is a very, very high quality prairie. Up to 200 native species are found in our grasslands alone, and they're basically just in a maintenance effort. The woodland that's on the bottom or in the foreview of the picture, this is one of our southern mesic forests. It's fairly healthy canopy wise. It's a good mixture of red oak, sugar maple, hickory, and cherry. We did have a lot of ash die-off that happened, and that was felled and cut down in that woods. And you can see over the ephemeral pond that's in the lower part, all the dead snakes, that was all ash that was there. In our maple or in our southern mesic forest here, if this is an area that's right, like the picture is taken above College Avenue, which is one of the main thoroughfares of Whitnell Park. This area gets a lot more disturbance just because it's right in a road. A road was built through it. There's a lot of salt deposit that happens on the side, especially going into the ephemeral pond. There's a lot of off-trail use. So this is an area that isn't very biodiverse in terms of like forbs or ground layer, but it has the structure of a really good habitat. There's not many invasives in this area. but it just doesn't have the diversity. Okay, this is another view of our grassland in the background of the picture. But then it also has a picture of our beach prairie in the foreview, so right next to Mallard Lake. This is an area that was intended to be a beach because if you remember, this was a recreational lake when it was built, and this is where the beach was. So they actually brought in sand and they filled this area. You wouldn't have sand or sand prairies in Milwaukee County. That wasn't a native plant community that was found here, but it is a community that we have here because of the construction of the beach. It gives us a really cool opportunity to incorporate plants that we typically wouldn't have here, but would have, a little bit further west in the driftless area. And then the woods that separate our main prairie and our beach prairie, that was once an oak opening. There was quite a few mature oak trees in there, but because of lack of management effort, this was basically filled in with invasive shrubs and invasive trees like buckthorn and honeysuckle. All of these areas that I've talked about so far are areas that were very high priority for me when I first came in. Not only are they, for the most part, in really good shape and really healthy, so it takes little effort to take it to the next step, they're also very visible. So when I was creating my management plan, I was putting together an idea of how am I going to manage 220 acres when I'm the only person. And I focused on areas that were nice. So I was keeping nice areas nice. And then I was focusing on high impact areas that were very visible to the public. Because one of my goals was to build excitement and build awareness that Wehr Nature Center is being cared for. And this was a way to hopefully recruit volunteers in my efforts and also recruit funding because money is what makes the job work. So here's a couple pictures of our ephemeral pond. About 20 years ago, as I said, like emerald ash borer wasn't here. And this ephemeral pond was a closed canopy ephemeral pond. It was really, really healthy. It was functioning properly. The water temperature was perfect for various amphibians. But then as emerald ash borer came in, the tree canopy completely died off, opened up the canopy, which then allowed for invasives to come in. So now this ephemeral pond is pretty much dominated by reed canary grass, which is a very aggressive wetland grass that grows in full sun. And the water temperature has changed because now it's getting direct sunlight. It's warming up faster. It's cooling off sooner. There's quicker evaporation that's happening, so it doesn't stay as wet as long. So really the management that we're doing in this area is not using herbicide because ephemeral ponds are already a sensitive plant community. We don't want to put a bunch of herbicides on the grass. We're instead playing the long game, and we've been planting new tree species in here that can tolerate being flooded to then grow to canopy height and then shade out our invasive issue, which is reed canary grass, and reed canary grass doesn't grow well in the shade. So this is an area that has been a relatively new focus area. This is on the south side of Mallard Lake. You can see that there's a little bridge and the waterway next to the golf course. That's Test Corners Creek flowing into Mallard Lake. The woods on the background of the picture to the south, This is all a southern lowland forest where we have historically had American beaver residing here. If you look in that little pond next to the golf course, you can actually see an old remnant beaver dam spanning across. Beaver haven't been in this part of Mallard Lake. We have them in other parts, but they haven't been in this part of Mallard Lake for probably 25 or 30 years. So one of my goals for this area is to restore this land to be more favorable for American beaver, which will then benefit our wetlands and our southern lowland forests immensely. Beavers are amazing creatures that really are considered a keystone species in wetlands. So if you can have residing beavers building dams, you're going to have a much healthier wetland. Before and after pictures are always fun. So this is the sedge meadow. That's part here. I'll go back. So on the little triangle of the between the trail and the lake, there's that little triangle of land that historically was sedge meadow. That's going to be what we're going to be talking about first. And then that peninsula past the bridge and on the lower left-hand side of the picture, that's all southern lowland forest, including past or south of the trail or on the background of. So most of this is southern lowland forest, sedge meadow, historically. But of course, when I say historically, anything right next to Mallard Lake is 1930s because Mallard Lake is a man-made lake. So historically to 1930s. All right, so this is a sedge meadow restoration project that we started in 2024. You can see on the left-hand side, super dense with buckthorn. You couldn't see more than 10 feet off the trail. There was very, very low diversity. If you're not familiar with buckthorn, buckthorn has a knack for really ruining the view. You can see it's just like, it's really bad. But there's so many reasons why I wanted to start on this area because, like I said, wetlands are very, very important for ecosystems, for retention, for cooling off water, especially water that's flowing into a lake. If it's going through a wetland, it's going to be cooler and then helping the lake stay cooler. This is also on a segment of our trail that's most heavily used. In 2024, we had over 100,000 people use our trails, and this is one of the main trails that those people use. So you can see on the left-hand side, that's before we started. Right-hand side, that's when we finished. I say we because it was me and many, many volunteers for many months out here. And then here's a before and after of a southern lowland forest. So this is like that peninsula that was just past the bridge. Again, left-hand side, super thick of buckthorn. And this is a project that we actually just started this year. So in 2026, we're only about 6 weeks into this work, and we're already making a pretty immense effort in this area. Here's another picture, just the incredible thickness of it, of buckthorn and of the invasives. And then after getting it cleared out, and this is like an area, like I said, is right on one of our busiest trails. So when we're working, we're getting stopped all the time. People are asking us, what are you doing? Why are you cutting down trees? Aren't you supposed to be planting trees? And it's like, yeah, well, yeah, we are. Just right now, we have to remove invasives. And then it's a really good learning opportunity. It's a really good teaching opportunity because even though people have been, aware of buckthorn, they don't really understand the impacts that buckthorn and other non-native invasive plants have. So teaching people about invasives, why they're an issue, and why having a healthy native habitat is much better. In our grasslands, really the only way that you can maintain a grassland as a grassland, whether that's a prairie or a savanna of some sort, oak opening or oak woodland, is the use of prescribed burn. And even though that we're in a residential area and a pretty densely populated area, we're still able to use prescribed burn. There's obviously restrictions. We can't have the wind blowing to the west and blowing into our neighbors to the west in the apartments. We also have an airport, so that is also a little challenging. Sometimes if smoke is rising too much, they won't allow us to do it. There's a golf course, so there's a lot of challenges. It makes the window of a possible burn much smaller, but we're still able to do it. And it really is one of the best parts of my job. People love coming out, seeing the difference. And so the picture on the top was taken in March of 2024. And then the picture on the bottom was maybe 4 weeks later, April 2024. And everything was already starting to green up and at least 4 to 5 inches tall at that point. All right, like I said, I'm one person for 220 acres. There really is no way that I could do this by myself. So we have a really dedicated group of volunteers, with Wehr Nature Center being 50 years old. There's a lot of people here that really consider Wehr Nature Center a part of their community. So every year I get anywhere from 3,500 to 5,000 hours worth of volunteer support helping maintain and manage our lands. That can be a one-time corporate group that's doing a garlic mustard pull-a-thon, which is shown on the big picture there. It could be my regular stewardship group that meets every single Wednesday morning. We have a group that maintains and builds our boardwalks and trail system that meets every single Tuesday morning. And then we get a lot of support and a lot of volunteer help from UW-Milwaukee and other area colleges, part of their conservation or biology departments. So it's a vast network of people that are willing to help put in the hours, whether it's a 2-hour slot or put in 100 hours a year. It really is what makes this place amazing. Now, there's obviously differences between doing restoration in a rural area where you're managing 10,000 acres versus an urban area. There's definitely challenges to both, but there's some things that are a little unique to being in an urban area. So this picture here shows, you can see Whitnell Park Pond over on the right-hand side. That's Mallard Lake. So that's where we're located. That black outline is the watershed of Test Corners Creek. So it's 10.3 square miles of watershed that flows into this small little creek. And if you would continue the creek underneath Whitnell Park Pond, tag, it will flow into the Root River that eventually flows into Lake Michigan. But you can see this is a very residential area. There's still some farm area, but it's a lot of space. And over the years, when it was rural and farm and feral fields, there wasn't a lot of stormwater runoff because all that water was soaking into the ground. But as development has happened and urbanization has sprawled from Milwaukee out to the far reaches of the county, you have all this impermeable surface that just pushes all the water right into these waterways, in this case, Test Corner Creek. And with that, you have all of the junk that flows with the water from the streets or in the lawns right into our waterways. This is a picture of Mallard Lake in May of 2022. You can see that there really isn't anything green except for the golf course that's right there. And if you would take a picture of an aerial view of houses, I'm pretty certain that you would see green turf grass and green lawns. all over that 12 square mile area. So you can imagine all the fertilizer, all the nutrients that are being put into people's lawns and on the golf course are flowing right into Mallard Lake. Typically, Mallard Lake has a really nasty algae bloom because of all of this stormwater runoff that's happening into it. You can see where the two red arrows are. That's where Test Corners Creek enters, and then there's that plume of sediment. At Wehr Nature Center, we have 4 very large erosion gullies that have resulted due to stormwater runoff from the western development of apartments and condos. And you can see that the sedimentation just sits in the water. When this lake was built, it was on average 18 feet deep. And the area that sediment plume is now, it's only about 6 inches deep. And the deepest part of Mallard Lake is 10 feet. So this lake has filled in drastically from stormwater runoff, sediment, and erosion, which has greatly altered the health of the lake. You have all this nutrient that's flowing into a warmer body of water that just makes it suitable for algae and non-native plant growth. What can I do about this though? I mean, this is like one of those questions. It's like there's so much within like urban restoration that's out of our control because there's all these pressures from outside our management areas. So we have a 10.3 square mile drainage area. We have 10.3 square miles of residents that need to help us do what we're doing and help take care of the land as much as we are. Then also being a nature center, we are open to the public 7 days a week. We have annually over 100,000 people that visit our trails. We have annual events. The top left picture is a picture of Bug Day that brings in nearly 1,000 people. We have maple syrup days that happens in a couple weeks actually. It's a week-long program that brings in over 2,500 people. And what that picture actually is showing there is a community school that we work with. It's Indian Community School, and it's a traditional faith-based multi-tribal school in Franklin that teaches their students the traditional knowledge of various Indian cultures, which is pretty amazing. All right. That's it for my presentation and my talk, but I just want to reiterate this amazing conference that's going to be happening in July here in Milwaukee at the Baird Center. Like Bernie said, I'm going to be one of the field trips that you can join if you are going to the conference. I have the registration link up there if you are interested. It is live. I hope you really got something from this. This is a fun part of my job. It's just like sharing the experiences that I have and sharing the work and getting people excited about habitat restoration. So thank you for joining. Here's my contact information. If anyone does want to reach out, please do. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Jeff. That was amazing. And we are so excited to have you host one of our field trips and to learn more about your work during the conference this summer. At this point, I want to open the floor to questions. Does anyone have any questions for Jeff? And feel free to unmute yourselves or include a question in the chat.
Hey, Jeff, this is Daniel McKenzie. I'll turn on my camera real quick. Awesome. I'm not sure if you can see me here, but
Yep.
Thanks for that great presentation. I'm currently working for an engineering firm, but I started my career with a county park system up in Indiana. and I'm now
Okay.
working out of Texas. So hearing a lot of your work is just really cool to see the this more strict restoration you're doing, but also the working with the public and the community. So I really enjoyed that. I guess my first question, I have just like a few smaller questions more to see how you've been implementing your management plan, but in particular, when you say that you're the only land manager and you talk about the volunteer engagement, so do you have
Mhm.
any team or does the county have a team of natural resource or even GIS folks that work with you all, or is it really just yourself and the volunteer efforts of the community?
So we do have a larger team within Milwaukee County Parks. We have a natural areas team that's 5 people for 7,500 acres. And part of their job is like the GIS effort. There's a couple people that do GIS. So like the whole team might be like 7 to 9 people, including GIS. Um, we also have forestry that comes out. So we have a forestry department that if we do need any assistance, like with big trees, felling trees, stuff like that, we have a network of individuals and teams that can help us with that. But it's pretty far and few between, and their responsibilities are spread out so much wider that it's not a consistent, um, you know, presence here at Wehr Nature Center. So for the actual, probably like 95% of the work that happens here, it's myself and a handful of volunteers. Like my Wednesday group, which is called Stew Crew, it meets every single Wednesday from 9 to 11 year round. I have 10 people, 10 to 12 people that come out every single week. And, but yeah, between them and myself, that's what's getting the work done.
Wow, that's incredible. Thanks for sharing on that. I think that's
Yeah.
something that I know getting the actual work, coordinating the people together is always, especially when you're covering such a large land area.
Hmm.
It's really cool to hear about how much you're getting the people together. And I guess that's my second question, so I can just so other people have a chance to ask the questions. But in general, in your area up there and being in Milwaukee, I know coming from Indiana, I think that the public perception for prescribed burning and also just invasive management and a lot of those things are pretty strong. In Texas, it's definitely harder and takes more convincing to do things like prescribed burning, especially with some of
Yeah.
the instances of where it's gone wrong or just it's harder in our climate. So how is
Yeah.
just the overall public perception and support in Milwaukee County for the work y'all do?
I would say Milwaukee County has a really strong support for the work that we're doing. Uh, I mean, Milwaukee County for a very, very long time has been known nationally for our park system. Uh, it has been really a drawing force for a lot of people who move to Milwaukee. So I would say that there's already a pretty good conservation like base, especially within like Ware Nature Center and like the immediate community. There's always some people that, bring out the negative sides of fire. And obviously you got to talk about that. Um, but all in all, doing a prescribed burn, it's not so much getting it past the community, it's getting past the red tape.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I see that someone, Julie, asked about the browsing. I never did. I said I was going to, and I never did. So that's like another issue with residential or urban restoration, um, is when you have such a large area that's urbanized and very small pockets of natural space, those pockets of natural space have so much more pressure put on them. Wildlife are drawn to these smaller areas. Um, More people go to these smaller areas. So the browsing that we have in our 220 acres, I think we have probably like 30 some deer, which is astronomical. We probably, for like a healthy deer herd, and I'm not a wildlife biologist, so someone please correct me if I'm wrong. But like a healthy herd for like 220 acres should be like 4 deer, you know, 4 or 5 deer. So we have 6, 7 times the population that we should. And deer are notorious for browsing on oaks, especially. They're notorious for browsing on various spring ephemerals. So because of the deer herd that we have, um, we don't have any oak regeneration that happens. Any oak that gets taller than 2 feet tall is chewed off and it just keeps on sprouting. So we don't have any really big regeneration. So we have to protect every single tree that we're planting. We have to protect every sapling that we want to protect. Our spring ephemerals, um, we just know that we're not going to have a lot of trilliums, for example, because trilliums are loved by deer. So it's like when I'm thinking about like what is the goal and what is the end game for my restoration, I just understand that this is optimal. We're going to be here. Like we're always going to bring it down a notch because there's things that are outside of our control. Now, I will say that within Whitnall Park, we do deer culling, which is sharpshooting of deer to control the deer population. That, unlike prescribed burn, has a huge outcry from the community. There's always people that don't want that to happen because they love seeing the deer and they don't want the deer to die, but they don't understand the really big effects that deer population have on natural spaces.
Thank you
Uh,
for answering those questions, Jeff. I think there was
yeah,
one more in the chat from
yeah. Anderson, Tate, if you're still here, could you maybe pop on and just clarify?
Yeah, I was just curious. So I started vernal pools as well, and in California though. So it
Okay.
is vastly different, and I really love hearing about the vernal pools with the canopy cover. I've only read about these things basically in like papers and books, so it was like to see it, it's really cool. So I was just curious. So in California, there's a lot of cattle grazing, of course, which is like kind of
Mm,
this legacy thing, but it is kind of like a still kind of a controversial thing that they do keep down invasives in a lot of
yeah,
areas in California, but it also comes at the cost that they trample on pools, they spread things around, all these different things, and it costs a lot of management time. But
yep,
I was thinking, since you were saying that it's very sensitive and you have this canopy cover and you're trying these other strategies, what if you brought in some like naturally like some kind of like you could farm like goats or something with like a farmer, bring them in, something. So I'm just
yeah.
trying to think like outside the box at this point, like, oh, what could you do to also kind of reduce invasives?
Oh, absolutely. And there's actually a few companies in the Milwaukee area that rent out their goats uh, to put into different restoration projects. And it's one of those things where we probably wouldn't be able to do it here just because of how public it is. There would be too much of a risk of goats being messed with, um, being taken, vandaled, whatever. Uh, there's a lot of work. You have to put up a fence around the area because you don't want to chain the goats down. That's not safe. That's not humane. So it would be putting in fences, but it's definitely a restoration project that happens in the Milwaukee area, maybe not in urban, but outside of Milwaukee, where goats will be brought in. And absolutely, it's a herbicide free way to control shrubs. The only downside is goats eat everything. So you got to make sure that if you're going to be putting goats into a restoration project or into a restoration area, that it really is void of all natives, and really just kind of like an invasive brush area because they're gonna eat everything. Good question though.
I think we have time for maybe one more question if someone wants to type one in the chat or unmute yourself and ask the question directly to Jeff. Okay. Don't think we have any more. So Jeff, maybe I'll go ahead and ask the last question. What are you most
Okay.
excited for the conference this summer?
I'm excited. Like this is like the first really big conference that's happening at Baird after it was renovated. So if you all come, it's going to be like a super beautiful venue. Um, I don't know. These conferences are just a really good way to connect with other people who are passionate about restoration and conservation. Uh, you talk to people from all around the country or all around the world, and even though our habitats are vastly different or the methodology that we use is vastly different, we all have like something to learn from one another and something to share. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to giving a tour. Like this is a super cool place to visit. So I'm hoping that it fills up and I can show everyone around and look at all the cool plants that we have.
I love that. I think that's a really good place to end today's session. Um, Thanks again, Jeff, for presenting, for being here today, for answering all of our questions. Thank you all for attending. We hope you join us at our next joint webinar later this spring. And likewise, I hope you join us in Milwaukee this summer.